Hi, I'm Mark Sumner, host of the Channel Chat podcast show, and today I have the pleasure of Phillip, the expert on LinkedIn for the last 12 years, but also the founder of the Jordan Legacy, which Steve will introduce himself on that in shortly. But first of all, Steve, thanks very much for coming on the show. I think you'll know already that I'm a massive, I don't like calling fan, but I have serious admiration for what's happened over the last 12 months for you, because I've seen your posts and seen all your posts and been very touched by them, because like I mentioned to you offline earlier, a friend of mine committed suicide this time last year. And obviously I know Jordan did for you last year. And I was just taken away and breathtaking really of what you've done over the last sort of 12 months to raise awareness of this, because the reason I was really keen to get you on, one, because it's something so close to your heart and so personal that you hopefully share some tactics, but also what I love about what you've done is you've actually done something about it. And you've actually, instead of actually, which I'm sure I can't even, I said I'll be welling up, I can't even empathize with what you've gone through. I love that you've taken the positives out of it and trying to spread that message on to people, which I just take my hat off to you completely. So I'm hoping that maybe you could give the listeners, your career to date, first of all, how you got into LinkedIn and the success of it, and then how you got to that December 4th moment, and then obviously talk about Jordan from there.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mark. Thanks for having me on as well. It's kind of interesting when you say start with my career, because in an odd way, and I was talking with someone about this the other day, it's almost as if my career to date kind of prepared me for what I'm doing now, in an odd way. That, for many years I've worked in the area of leadership and management development, led sales teams, was director of a training company, and set off on my own journey around about 12 years ago and founded an organization, sounds grand actually, it's mostly me and a couple of other people, around LinkedIn and social media consultancy, and that led me to work with all shapes and sizes of companies, from Toyota to Harley Davidson, FedEx, Deloitte, companies all around the world really, and kind of 11 years plus of that expertise in the business to business arena of social media for marketing and business development. That was my career. And interesting enough, just looking back on LinkedIn at what I was doing this week, 12 months ago, speaking at Olympia to an audience there, and not knowing that 6 or 7 days away, my life was about to change enormously. And interesting, I was delivering on December the 4th a social media workshop to a large motor group in the Midlands in Solihull. Got out of that office at around about 3:15, got into my car, got my phone out to put it into the cradle on the dashboard there, and saw Charlotte's name, Charlotte, girlfriend, appear as an incoming call. She wouldn't normally call, but not necessarily that unusual. And I answered that phone, and that's when the bombshell hit, with this distraught young lady just telling me she'd found Jordan and what had happened. And
I can't imagine. As I said to you last year, my friend, I got a phone call from my friend's partner. Exactly in the morning, couldn't believe what had happened, really. Especially I'd seen him only 2 or 3 days before, and I think the shock sits in, and you just, for me, I didn't believe it. Quite frankly, I didn't believe it for probably a week or so ago, and a week or two, and over the last year, and you've had the sort of same period. I've had my own issues, quite frankly. I've had my own issues of, either it's, feeling down and depressed, and COVID hasn't helped that at all. Making sure those isolation and not being able to reach out to people. And I think what I loved about your post, and I know I've commented on your post for the last 12 months. I'm going to be honest with you, Stephen. I wouldn't have probably commented unless I'd had some experience of that being that close to me. So when I see the leukemia post or the cancer post, I do just flick past and I don't wear it. But when I saw your post, the identification I got from it, I was like, even though it's not a close family member as yours, I said, I can't even imagine what it's like. I did start to feel those shreds of emotion come through, and I felt compelled to type and kept on commenting on your post, because I just thought, I can't relate. I can't understand what this man's going through, and yet I had such admiration for how you turned it into positives. So, you know, without going into details of Jordan's death, I want to sort of move on to sort of how you then suddenly gave the strength and I don't know how you've got the strength to do it, quite frankly, but I'm hoping you can share with the listeners how you got the strength and the motivation and the inclination to suddenly think, you know what, out of this, I will share those experiences and those methods and the stuff that I've learned with the rest of the world. Because most people, I think, would be just wanting to curl up and just pretend it's not happening. And I remember, I did that for quite a while when I had it. I just didn't want to know anyone. And I didn't want to share anything that was going on, but you took another route, and I want you to sort of like tell me what inspired you to do that.
Yeah, it's really, you know, it'd be like some movie story to say I suddenly had this inspirational moment and this epiphany, and I must do this, and that it's necessarily a sign of strength in what I've done, because a lot of people have said you've been brave and it's strong, and actually, if I'm really honest, I don't think I have been. So what do I think happened? Well, first of all, I think, again, a lot of skills, a lot of personal development that I've been through over the years, being a professional coach, kind of having a reasonable level of self-awareness. I think a lot of skills I developed over the years readied me in some respects for what has happened. And then, as I say, the very first article that I published on LinkedIn, which was December the 16th, kind of 3 weeks later, somebody, a good friend of mine, said, look, you need to write down what's going on. You need to document it, something you'll want this to look back on and make sense of at some point. And as I, given my experience with LinkedIn, a regular publisher there, quite a decent following, I was used to writing and publishing. So I thought, well, I'll write something. I don't know whether I'll necessarily publish it, but let me write it. And I'll do it on a LinkedIn article publishing platform. I kind of laid it out. I added some images and thoughts, and I kind of read it back, and I thought, well, I'm going to share this, but why am I sharing it? Okay. And my finger kind of hovered around over the button for ages. And I think in the end, when I came and said, look, what was my motive? My motive there was, I don't want anyone else to go through this crap. No other family should have to go through this. And that was the reason. That was the reason I pressed that publish button, because I thought, if one person kind of reads this and goes, geez, I need to do something about my mate, or I need to do something about myself, or my son, or daughter, or father, mother, whatever it would be, then it was worth doing it. I had no expectations. I have to say, LinkedIn articles are notoriously horrendous for any kind of engagement. But it just happened. It just, from that day, it just kind of snowballed in, whether that was people that were just empathizing with me, or whether that was, in some cases, people saying, I've just read your article, I was considering doing exactly the same, and I'm now not going to. Or I've had the same experience, or, it just came from all quarters. I had psychologists writing to me and just saying, you've kind of articulated this in a way I've been trying to do in theoretical papers for years. So it clearly struck a chord with people, and that was the catalyst, really, Mark. That was, all right, so if that's had an impact, and a positive impact from what I can see, what else could I do? And that was kind of how it started. From there, conversations with friends and family. Can we do something about this? I mean, we're all going through crap, and I'm physically still not sleeping. I'm having what I used to describe as body convulsions or head jerking, and Zopiclone to help me sleep at night. I'm going on for months, and as we're getting close to the anniversary next week, some of that has started to come back again now. So we're going through all that, but in an odd way, and I come back to what I said, I don't think it's necessarily about being brave or strong. By being very clear about what I was looking to do to try and make sure this doesn't happen to others, I then started to be able to compartmentalize it and put it into a box. that every day, if you imagine, I'm sharing a post, I'm writing an article, I'm sending an email, I'm doing something on our website and mentioning my son's name. I don't know, 100 times a day. But at that moment, it's kind of in a box. Even to some degree, doing a podcast like this, although I can, and maybe given the timing of this and everything, but I know there's been moments in almost every podcast where suddenly I'm talking about it and it just kind of creeps up on you. But I'm able in the main into a box when I write something. When I work, that part of my brain just puts it over there, and then I just have my shit times or wherever. And that's kind of how I'm dealing with it. So I don't think it's brave. I don't think it's strong. It's just having the resources that have been developed over years to be able to manage it, I think.
Do you know what, Stephen? You made a point there when you first started about, you having that self-awareness about yourself and how you'd cope yourself, because from what I've gone through myself over the last year, I was almost sort of thinking, if this had been last year, I might have known, I might have saw the signs, I might have done something. But at the time, when I saw my friend, and I literally saw him 3 or 4 days before it happened, Stephen, I had no idea. I had no idea he was even unhappy, etc. And I wonder, what do you see as people who can actually maybe see the signs? What do you see the signs as? Because for my opinion, now I've sort of like understood it a bit more. Isolation, cutting off people that you love, people close to you. I see that as a really key sign of someone actually, not returning phone calls, not wanting to go to social events, isolating themselves. That's a key sign. Now I see that. Before I was just seeing, it's just being moody or whatever it is. I've just been thinking, and you can imagine how upsetting it is now, knowing what I know now and thinking what I could have done then. Do you see the key signs of sort of hopefully presenting these traumatic events happening?
Yeah, you just described one there, Mark. And we look back at Jordan over years now, and we used to say, "God, it's hard work trying to." Jordan only lived 20 minutes down the road from me, but the number of times I would be invited over, and we had a close relationship. Loving family. Although his mum and I have been divorced for quite a number of years, we all get on very well, and she gets on great with my wife and so on. But yeah, God, it's hard work getting to see Jordan, isn't it? And George, do you want to come over and see your sister in Morecambe? Oh, God, well, I'll see. I've got a lot on, and it was just, it's just hard work, isn't it? Just trying to get together. And what I now understand, that someone struggling in a social situation, even with family, probably not wanting to burden the family, just finding every kind of social event hard work. And yet he had this phenomenal network of friends. I mean, I've never known anything like it. When you've got 4 or 5 best mates, they all think, they're his best mate in different walks of life, who none of them saw it coming, who, I had a colleague of his the other day just said, how shocked she was that, he was supporting her with her anxiety when they went on a training course to Birmingham. He was always smiling, always upbeat for other people. The energy that probably took to do that is just incredible. But yeah, withdrawing socially, absolutely. Struggling to sleep. I look back at 1 or 2 WhatsApp messages a few days before, and how are you doing, George? Oh, yeah, he finally started to say, I'm not doing too well, Dad. But most of the time, not so bad, doing okay, but not sleeping well. Constant theme. I'm not sleeping. Had another bad night. Oh, at least I got up and had a wash and a shave this morning, Dad. And that we had a bit of a jokey banter about that. Oh, that's good news. But now you're not sleeping, you're not going out, you're struggling. I'm coming over.
Yeah,
we're gonna have a chat.
It's really interesting because again, I'm trying to sort of go back to where I am now and understanding it more. And last year, if someone had said that to me before, I'd have been ignorant. I'd have dismissed it. I'd be like, just have a shave and get on with it. I'd have told them to snap out of it.
Yeah.
And yet now there are clear warning signs of that, and you think actually you are more sort of attuned and more aware of it. And having that awareness is key, I think. Now, in the IT industry, we're in an industry where it's high octane, it's lots of pressure. But there is that stigma of actually saying to somebody. So, if someone says to me, "Are you okay?" The automatic response is, "Yeah, I'm fine, I'm good." Now, unless someone asks me again, like, are you really okay? I'm not, you know, I might not say, do you know what? It hasn't been great. The 6 months hasn't been great. But how would you break the stigma of that? Because I would be thinking myself, oh, you know, no one wants to hear my problems. I'm just sort of wasting people's time, and you know, I've just got to be upbeat all the time, and I've got loads of energy, etc., etc. But if you don't actually ask someone, when you even see it, if you haven't got the self-awareness to see it, they won't say it. They won't say anything because they'll think they're burdening that other person, won't they? So how would you recommend people who are in our industry, or in the IT industry, to sort of think, and they might have staff, and they might have people that are isolated, and they might not have close networks of friends like maybe Jordan had to even help even identify a problem. How would you sort of recommend them sort of to starting that conversation without getting the stigma? Because you know, most men don't like talking about things like this at all. You know, maybe women are quite better at it. I don't know, but you know, the men especially, I find it's almost like, oh, it feels a bit pansies talking about that sort of stuff. So how do you think we can break the stigma first of all?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, look, 75% of all suicides are male. 30% of people generally have suicidal thoughts at one time or another in any given year. 1 in 4 people have a mental health issue in the UK every year. You know, firstly, we've got to understand this. This is, if we can use the word normal, is a fairly normal occurrence in society today. So the last thing you want to feel is awkward, weird on your own. And you know, one of the things you mentioned immediately is if you've sort of seen signs, people withdrawing a bit, or if you're close to someone and their eating has changed, they're either overeating, undereating, or just not caring for themselves properly, just not socially interacting, whole range of you know, if you see their behaviour change in any way out of the norm, I think in this day and age, it's absolutely not only is it only okay to talk, it's absolutely all right to ask the question. And that question, as you said, is not how you're doing, end of story. Because you are, particularly if it's a male, going to get that response. No, I'm doing fine. Okay, look, how are you really doing? And look, reason why I ask is, this is what I'm seeing. This is how I think what I'm seeing is impacting on you or others around you. I just want to have a chat with you about kind of what's going on and how can I help. And one of the things to just is kind of be as authentic and normal and friendly, and don't get into like a consultant type mode or anything like that. And one of the things, you know, I picked this up from the conference I was on this morning, that just saying to somebody, look, don't be embarrassed about this at all. You know, there are a whole host of people going through what you're going through right now. I'm just going to listen to you. I'm not going to judge you in any way. Tell me how you're really feeling.
Yeah, and it's funny. It's funny, Stephen, when you know, and again through personal experience and friends and stuff, I've been speaking to myself about this subject because I'm very passionate about it. Once you have that self-awareness that you know there is other people suffering, suddenly it's like a radar. You suddenly spot people straight away, and they start talking to you and saying, "I had that problem. I had that problem." Mm-hmm. So do you think what we're doing now? You know, like I reached out to you, and I was very passionate about reaching out to you because of what happened to my friend last year, and some of the challenges I've had. But do you think identification is really important? Because if you don't have that identification with another human being, there is that stigma to sort of think, well, if Stephen's sort of okay and he's been doing his job, etc. If I say to him I'm not okay, he's going to think, oh God, this is a real ball ache. Mark's going on like this, or Joe Blogs is going on like that. Can you just stop talking? And to be honest with you, Stephen, I'd have been that guy last year. I'd have been like, oh, I don't want to hear this. And yet now, having my own challenges, I'm thinking, actually, you know, I do want to hear it. And I am much more empathetic when I see it. I can see the signs straight away. I can see the signs in the team or my friends, etc. So, you know, if we now see the tactics, we move forward onto sort of like the positive steps we can take. Once you've maybe identified the problem and you think, yeah, I've spoken to Stephen. He said, "Are you okay?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Are you really okay?" And he said, "No." What happens then? I've identified it. Stephen says to me, he's not getting up shaving, he can't go to work, he's feeling down, he's not doing the 3 meals a day, he's not getting his exercise, he's doing all the things that Stephen used to do and love. And you know that he doesn't do that now. What can you do then?
I think it's all about asking really open questions, adapt. I think first of all, I'll just come back to this thing about being authentic and human. So I don't think it matters what the relationship is. You can be a boss, you can be anyone, but as long as you switch into human mode, genuine human mode at that point, you know, if you're in an office with someone, you get down to their level. You know, if it's on a Zoom call, just make sure no one's around that's going to overhear the conversation. Your whole body language, the empathy and the look in your face and the expressions, really good active skills, and that means that you're kind of nodding in the appropriate places as you're doing now. It's not interrupting, it's not putting your own viewpoint or your experiences or suggesting when it sounds like you might have this, or, you know, don't do any of that. Listen, absolutely listen. Occasionally maybe feedback what the person's saying, not only to show that you've understood, but actually sometimes when they hear it repeated back, it makes them, did I just say that? You know, that could be really, really useful. At that point, I think you need to start asking those open questions. All right, so tell me a bit about what's going on. You know, how is, you know, what's going on? How is that making you feel? What specifically? What's kind of changing for you? What are the emotions? What are some of the things that's going on? Once you've got a bit of an understanding of what's happening, then you've got to then consider what are the next steps. You know, what are you going to do? What are they going to do? I think it's all about working very collaboratively with that person to say, okay, right, tell me a bit about what are you doing at the moment to help with this? Because it sounds to me from what you're saying, you're going through some stuff at the moment. Who else knows? Who's close to you that you can, you know, I'm your boss or whatever, but who is close to you that you can open up to? Have you done?
Yeah.
You know, that's a start. I think you then potentially go further depending on the responses, because if you're starting to get concerned now, you maybe start to ask, you know, look, can I ask you, are you seeing anyone professionally at the moment? Have you been to your GP? Or, okay, how do you feel about, again, don't say, I think you should go, right? You know, yeah, how do you feel about, you know, doing that? Just seeing where they're at. And depending on where that conversation goes, Mark, I'm kind of short-cutting a little bit here. Do not be afraid to ask that ultimate question. And I'm just got to ask you, Mark, are you considering in any way self-harming or taking your own life? Language is really important. That was really interesting, and forgive me for picking this up because it's something I picked up and learned myself this year when I started using it. But a lot of people are using the word committing suicide. It's something that still suggests it's illegal and a criminal offence to do that. It hasn't been since 1962. So, and again, we're talking about this on a conference this morning. The language is really important around, because I subsequently learned that it was okay to say they completed suicide, but even that makes it sound like it's a successful mission. And you go, oh, hang about. So look, you died by suicide, or are feeling suicidal, maybe, or they took their own life. So the question there is, are you thinking of taking your own life? You know, it's probably you know, the right language to use, but you've got to ask the question if you've got to that point where you've any doubts at all, and you know, the subsequent question to that would be, do you have a plan?
Yeah.
Now, I think what's really interesting with that is we all said this came out of the blue with Jordan. Okay, nobody had any idea. Over the months that followed, as we went into Jordan's house and found boxes in the loft and found bits of journals that he'd kind of started, never fully complete, but over the years, I remember one day bringing the box home, and we're all kind of sitting here with the family in January, February this year, before we all got kind of locked down. And I just went through this notebook, and there was a diary note from May of 2015, been researching ways to commit suicide, written in there. This seems like quite a good route. 2015.
Oh, I can't. It's hard to hear, Stephen. It really is. It really is. Stephen, one of the things I wanted to really ask you, and it is a personal question, and I hope you don't mind me asking. it's devastating for the person going through the challenges of either depression or thinking those thoughts, etc. And they may be blissfully unaware of what's going on, and they don't know why it's happening, etc. But it's also devastating for the people around them who can't do anything and can't seem to help. And so, for instance, you mentioned, maybe Jordan, is isolating. You don't know why he's isolating, etc. And if you don't have those tools, etc., it's a very personal question. And I really hope you don't mind me asking, what have you learned in terms of actually helping yourself deal with that, not knowing that you were helpless yourself and you couldn't? So if there's people out there that are actually thinking, I've got an employer or a friend or a sister or a brother or whatever it is going through this challenge, I feel helpless myself, I can't help them. What help is there for those sort of people that are associated with it?
Wow, yeah, that's a really good question. So, I mean, just to understand the question, then, is this people looking back retrospectively or people currently?
Well, both almost. If someone's actually dealing with someone that's depression and they're helpless, what help is there for us? If someone's identified the problem, they've got one of their partners or work colleagues, and they don't want help. That person doesn't want help. What help is there for those guys? Because they're in torment themselves.
Yeah, not enough is the answer. As simple as that. I just attended last week the National Suicide Bereavement Conference, and a massive report just been released of study through 2017 and 18 of over 7,000 people bereaved by suicide. And look, there's been nothing in place for those people. If people will read that first article I published and see what we went through in the first week, where for I don't know how many days, we didn't even know where Jordan was. They took him away, and we didn't know where he was. We didn't know who the police were, the officers dealing. We didn't know how to contact. I'm driving around police stations in Leeds, trying to find out, where his personal possessions are and where he is. You think this is 21st century, and that's going on. At the moment, there's mine, there's Samaritans, there's our own website, the jordanlegacy.com now, which again is very much work in progress. There's kind of lots and lots of stuff for the people who are struggling themselves, but there's still not enough for people that are trying to support those who are struggling at the moment. And that needs to be improved significantly. I saw some stats this morning that said that the number of people directly impacted by any single suicide now is on average 136 people. I could name those 136 people in Jordan's network. Some of his best mates messaging me this week. One lives overseas. This is tough, but he messaged me this week because they work together abroad. I won't name where it is because it might just single out the person. And this lad, he's mid-30s himself, his best mate. He said, I don't know what it was. I walked over to the apartment block where Jordan was living in this town just today. And I just sat in the lobby there for hours. And this is the impact. This is the knock-on effect, and the ripple effect is huge. And look, that doesn't turn people on. The 1.7 million pounds to the British economy it costs for every single suicide that happens through loss of future income. 60-70% of that, by the way, goes to fund bereaved people who are struggling afterwards. Why it's so important to ask that, going back to asking that question, is because the consequences of not asking, because you feel a bit embarrassed or you feel a bit awkward, or look, it's not going to put the thought in the head. The thought's already there, okay, if it's there. But the consequences of not asking that question, massive.
Yeah, and Steve, it's hard for me to hear what you're saying. It really is, because I think you're right. I think I'm talking about maybe there's a bit of stigma in our industry about talking to guys or whatever, and yet the devastation it causes to families, girlfriends, boyfriends, work colleagues, etc., just far outweighs that. And quite frankly, one of the reasons I wanted to get you on here was because over the next 20 episodes that we're going to do, we're going to really focus on that, because it's a massive problem in our industry. It's a huge problem, and it goes under the carpet. And we have a lot of award ceremonies saying, I'm this award, I'm that award, I've won this award or that award. And then I speak to them, and it's like they've got 5 or 6 people signed off ill through depression, anxiety, and all this sort of stuff with suicidal thoughts. And you think, damn, no one's mentioning that. It's still about the celebration. So I think it's hugely important. It's something we're going to be promoting promoting. That sounds such not the wrong word, but you know what I mean, raising awareness over the next sort of month or so. The last question I wanted to ask you, and is probably an answer that you've probably been. I almost struggle to ask you. How do you think we can prevent this? And you touched on it before we started about if people are jumping off bridges, how do we stop them getting to bridges? If people are thinking about taking tablets, how do we get access to tablets? It seems an unanswerable question. But in your experience over the last 12 months, what answers have you found, and what answers could we share with the industry?
Yeah, look, it's a relatively straightforward answer, to be honest, and something I've learned this year. And if anyone's interested in the work that we're doing alongside the Zero Suicide community out there, then they just need to go to thejordanlegacy.com. But we've just started rolling out this plan right now, but in 2021 it will be a fairly massive plan. Based on a lot of evidence, case studies out there from Detroit, a very famous case study, Merseycare over here in the UK, Australia, and other areas with the global suicide community, the Zero Suicide community. We know there are practical steps we can take. We can take practical steps in our communities by increasing awareness and getting community organisations, whether that's a chamber of commerce or a sports club or a school or whatever it is, start having the conversations and start putting their own zero suicide plans in place. We can start talking with the built environment. We can start talking with construction companies, surveyors, architects, as we are now, design schools, to say, right now you could prevent someone climbing that bridge by putting a barrier up there. But if you had to design out suicide in future, how would you stop someone opening that window to deliberately jump out, not accidentally fall out? What would you do differently? If it's in the digital world, how can we bring the digital, particularly your area there, how can we start using IT more constructively to, warn people, warn loved ones, track individuals or support individuals themselves in other ways that might be considering? How can we make better use of technology that's out there? And within the workplace particularly, how can we really start to make sure that we have a top-down strategy and a ground-up strategy where the workforce and management come together to say, how do we really, not just pay lip service to this with a let's have a Reiki evening, or something like that. How do we put a proper well-being strategy into our business? Because look, this is costing UK businesses £46 billion, sorry, £45 billion a year. Mental health problems, and every single business person that's listening to this, business owner, will be losing money as a result of absenteeism, presenteeism, and mental health issues in their workplace. That's not a guesstimate, that's an actual fact. There is a return on investment through looking after the well-being of your employees. You've just got to take that punt and do it, to be honest.
Yeah, and absolutely. And, I want to echo that, Steve. I think in our industry, this is why I really was keen to get you on, because I think in our industry and across all industries, of course, but IT is very high octane. It's very high pressurized. And, I've heard 3 or 4 people this week mention that 3 or 4 people who I know through friends of friends and colleagues committing suicide, or bosses and brothers. And it's just shocking. And unless it's actually raised awareness of actually this is actually killing people, it's not just having time off work. These actually people are actually taking their own lives. I just don't think people are taking it seriously enough. And it's almost been the catchy campaigns. It's okay to be okay. That isn't enough. That's not going to do anything.
No.
That won't do anything.
One more example just to share here. If you, as an IT crowd, forgive the pun, were standing around a bar and one of your mates was drinking heavily, and they were about to get in the car, what would you do?
Yeah.
You'd stop them.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be. Oh, should I? Is there a bit of stigma around asking them about? Should you be getting in your car, mate?
You take the keys off them.
You take the keys off them.
Yeah, Stephen, look, you've been a fantastic guest. I think it's such an important subject. It really has. It's been quite emotional. It's touched my heart. So I'm sure the listeners are going to get a lot of out of it. So thanks so much for your time for coming on.
No, thank you for inviting me on.
Thanks for joining us and listening to another episode of our Channel Chat podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard and are listening on iTunes, please could you give us a review and subscribe in order to get the newest episodes as soon as they're released. Otherwise, as always, we release an episode every Thursday at midday, so hopefully you can join us then.